Hello and welcome to the Wire Prime Time. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan. At a time when the government of Canada has levelled serious charges against the government of India, but placed little to no evidence in the public domain, and where the Indian side has used unprecedentedly strong language to deny these accusations, it is hard for journalists and laypersons to know what or whom to believe. In such a situation, most Indians and Canadians are likely to take the default position of giving their government the benefit of doubt. But that doesn't mean we can't try to unpack the story into its basic elements and see where the balance of probability lies. So let's start at the very beginning. The Khalistan movement has not posed a security threat to India for more than 2 decades now. Punjab is peaceful. Most incidents of violence there are linked to the rise of criminal gangs and their nexus with the drug trade. Remnants of the old Khalistan movement still exist in Canada, the US and Australia, but their hold, even on the Sikh diaspora, is marginal. There are no doubt Khalistani activists in these countries who still harbour the goal of a Sikh state and who celebrate the violence and terrorism which the Khalistan movement once engaged in, but whom the Indian government is unable to credibly link to acts or even threats of violence that would allow it to seek their extradition from these countries. Officially, someone like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is wanted for terrorism in India, but the Indian government in 2022 failed to even convince Interpol that he should be put on a terror watch list. Over the past 2 years, Indian diplomats have complained of close proximity demonstrations by Khalistani protesters outside the Indian High Commission in Ottawa, including one where some of those who gathered shook the fence outside the High Commission, put up posters, and released 2 smoke canisters. India says Canada has not done enough to ensure the safety of Indian diplomatic missions or take action against those advocating violence. The Canadian side says it is constrained by its own free speech laws. We have an extremely diverse country and freedom of expression is something that we have, quote unquote, Justin Trudeau said last year, and he added, but we will also make sure that we are pushing back against violence and extremism in all its forms. The Indian government's complaints had given rise to the expectation that the Khalistani activists would be lashing out soon. Instead, the form in which violence finally arose took everyone in Canada by surprise. In June 2023, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Khalistan activist in Surrey, British Columbia, was shot dead by gunmen outside a Gurudwara. 3 months later, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stood up before Canada's Parliament to say there was, quote, credible intelligence, unquote, linking the government of India to Nijjar's murder. Canada also announced the expulsion of an Indian diplomat from Ottawa. India last year angrily dismissed Trudeau's allegation, accused him of pandering to vote bank politics, in other words, Canadian Sikhs, and ordered a downsizing of the Canadian diplomatic presence in India. Relations between Ottawa and New Delhi went into a holding pattern thereafter until the Modi government received another jolt in November 2023, this time from the United States. Federal prosecutors there unsealed an indictment against an Indian national, Nikhil Gupta, for conspiring to kill or attempting to kill the New York-based Pannu, a US citizen. Gupta was accused of working closely with a government security official from India, identified in the indictment as CC1. India's response to the US indictment was muted. Instead of angry fulminations, the government said it had appointed an internal committee to investigate the American charges. Meanwhile, the Canadians, who continued with their investigations largely under the radar, dropped a major bombshell on October the 12th when they confronted India's National Security Advisor Ajit Kumar Doval at a meeting in Singapore with what they said was evidence linking 6 Indian diplomats, a senior RAW official, as well as Union Home Minister Amit Shah, to violent attacks on Canadian Sikhs. On October 13th, the Canadian government formally asked India to lift diplomatic immunity for its High Commissioner in Ottawa and 5 other diplomats, so that investigators from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police could question them about the Nijjar case and other incidents of violence. Canada's foreign minister said that the police had, quote, ample, clear and concrete evidence which identified 6 individuals as persons of interest in the Nijjar case, unquote. The Indian government rejected this request, leading to the expulsion of its diplomats, followed by the counter-expulsion of 6 Canadian diplomats from India. The Modi government's case is that Trudeau is making allegations against India in order to garner support from Sikh voters. Assuming that is so, it is not clear why Trudeau's purpose would not have been adequately served last year when he first levelled his accusation, and why he would need to repeatedly escalate matters again and again, even suborning the RCMP's investigations in the process. Besides, there are as many Canadians of Hindu Indian origin as there are of Sikh Indian origin, and it is not apparent why Trudeau would supposedly court one vote bank by targeting India, even if this means angering another vote bank of equal size. Yes, it is suspicious that this bombshell landed even as news outlets are reporting that Trudeau is facing a possible backbench revolt, writes John Ibbotson, a columnist for the Globe and Mail, the leading Canadian newspaper. Quote, it may also be true that Canadian governments have, for partisan political reasons, turned a blind eye to action by Sikh extremists in Canada, he writes. But, he adds, the Indian counter-allegations of vote bank politics, quote, could only be true if the Canadian police and government were both completely corrupt and Canadian democracy a sham. And he concludes by saying the Indian response is the ultimate in gaslighting. Now, I'm not a fan of Canadian democracy or of Trudeau, but I'm inclined to go along with Ibbotson. The Canadian allegations need to be dealt with on the basis of logic and facts, and not by making personal attacks on anyone. In any case, all indications are that Canadian investigators have had access to electronic intelligence provided to them by the United States, a country with close strategic ties to India, and it is unlikely that Washington would allow Ottawa to run away with a fabricated narrative that could endanger its own ties with New Delhi. Let's not forget, US federal investigations in the Pannu case have uncovered links with the Nijjar killing, since Gupta and his handler CC1 shared real-time photos of Nijjar's lifeless body soon after he was shot dead in Canada with the undercover operative that they had contracted for the Pannu murder. The US indictment ties the attempted murder to an Indian security official in Delhi, and the fact that India has now told the US that it has arrested that official gives the latest Canadian accusations a further ring of credibility. Given the way the Modi government works, there is also no way that this official was working on his own. He was clearly doing what he was ordered to do by his superiors. So, in my view, we can no longer say that the US, or Canada for that matter, is out to discredit India, and that all of these allegations have been fabricated out of thin air. Now, retired Indian intelligence officials and diplomats that I've spoken to have all expressed surprise over the Canadian claim that Home Minister Amit Shah had authorized the attacks under investigation. Shah controls the Intelligence Bureau, but foreign actions come under RAW, the Research and Analysis Wing, which they say reports to NSA Doval and Prime Minister Modi. And then we know that ministers are always careful not to get their own hands dirty in operational matters. Now, this may be true of the Indian system traditionally, but what these assessments fail to take into account are the deep changes that the Modi era has brought about. No Home Minister has enjoyed as much power and clout as Amit Shah does, not L.K. Advani, not even Sardar Patel. With greater power comes greater recklessness. As an all-powerful Home Minister in Gujarat, we know from the Sohrabuddin matter that Amit Shah did not flinch from closely interacting with police operations. We know that the manner in which the gangster Lawrence Bishnoi operates from Ahmedabad jail suggests a certain degree of official indulgence. When the trial of the 3 Bishnoi gang gunmen arrested for the Nijjar killing begins in Canada, a lot of the evidence that the Canadian government says they have will emerge. Even if it does not emerge in full, the stage is set for further national embarrassment.